for joining us
Sorry.
today. Sorry. Thank you so much for joining us today in the frame of the 8th of March. Today we will be talking with Jacqueline, and at the end of this talk, we will have a space for you to make any questions. So feel free to write them down in the chat box and we will answer them. So now, Anna, if you want, you can introduce our special guest.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here. As Lu said, here we are with Jacqueline Samira. Jacqueline is the CEO of Austin Software, a software company that has grown a lot in the recent years. So we consider that this was a really good guest to join us in this webinar. So thank you very much, Jacqueline, and the webinar is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anna. I'm so excited to be here and talk to you guys. Like everyone said, I'm going to go through this presentation, and at the end, we will open it up for some questions and answers. And, you know, I had the pleasure of meeting the Busquets IT team, gosh, several years ago. And it's been great to be a part of this journey with you. So as far as this presentation goes, the way that I have organized it is I will start by talking a bit about me and who I am, give you a timeline of how I've evolved over my career and some of the good things I've done, some of the bad things, and really everything in between. And then a bit of an overview for how to start a company, the way that I approached it at the beginnings, and what we're doing today, and then of course what our vision is for tomorrow. And then at the end of this, we will have a Q&A for the end of it. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right in and talk a bit about me. So this is just a quick overview, just to give some street credibility for why you should even listen to what we're talking about today. But I have taken 3 different companies from no revenue to over $1 million in less than a year. I have also been the head of sales at 3 different Y Combinator companies. And for those on the call, if you're unfamiliar with Y Combinator, it is an amazing startup accelerators. It was actually the first of its kind and really changed the way that venture capital operates now. Today, it's a very, very founder friendly type of vehicle for founders in terms of investments. And Y Combinator is behind companies like Coinbase and Dropbox and Heroku and Docker and many more amazing tech companies that we use every single day. And so over the course of my career, I've made my companies over $100 million in revenue. I founded my own company, Austin Software, which I'll be talking a lot more about throughout this call. And we also got accepted into Y Combinator in winter of 2021, which was really exciting. And as of today, we are over 200 employees. So before I jump into a bit about me and my background, I'd love to give you guys a background of Austin Software and what our company does. Basically, Austin Software is a community of very talented developers located in 9 cities across South America. And our entire ethos is really to put a developer's well-being at the forefront of everything that we do. We exist to give our team everything they need to do their job today, to do it well, and to really just excel. So how does it work? Well, basically our engineers work directly on top tech companies, or excuse me, directly at top tech companies like Coinbase, and are supported by a group of personalized mentors located in each of our cities. And we also have a support system within our robust community of developers that thrive on collaboration and knowledge sharing, giving our team really the best of both worlds, because you can work directly on a US tech team, but get to knowledge share within a community of folks within your own hometown, which is awesome. And our business model is really developer friendly, and it's very developer first because we base every single action on the success of our teammates today and throughout their entire career. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about it later in the presentation, but just to give you guys some background on what we do at Austin Software. So how did I get here? Well, first, I had to be born. I was born in 1986, so you guys can all age me based on that. But really, things started to get interesting in 2008. This is when I graduated university. I got a degree in economics. And from there, I moved to New York City in 2009. At that time, I was promoted a couple years later to director of sales, and that promotion moved me to Austin, Texas in 2011. I worked there for several years, and finally in 2015, I landed my dream job where I was the VP of sales at a tech company, and it was actually my first Y Combinator company here in Austin, Texas. From there in 2017, I got poached to be a head of sales at another Y Combinator company, and I left that in 2018, where I became head of sales for my third company. And at the end of 2018 was actually when I started Austin Software. Of course, 2022, that's today. A lot has happened leading up to that, but really it's my goal that in 2086, when I am 100 years old, that I will have died happy, having created an amazing company that turned into a unicorn company. But the reason why I tell you this timeline the way that I have right now is because generally when we look at a person's career or we see someone's success, it looks very linear and it looks very obvious. Yes, this person went from here to here to here to here, but oh my gosh, I'm running into like all of these hangups and I'm having all of these issues and I'm really upset and I don't feel like my career is going along the trajectory that I had envisioned for myself or I wanted for myself. But in fact, my path was actually really, really windy as well. So while looking back, it might look linear, but there was a lot of heartache that happened. And so I want to go through that same timeline, but through the lens of like complete euphoria at the top, and then of course, ultimate sadness at the bottom, because like I said, there was a lot of heartache that has happened to get us to where we are right now. So when I graduated in 2008 with my degree in economics, I graduated in the worst recession. I don't know if those on the call remember, but 2008, 2009, 2010, there was a huge housing crisis in the United States that then ended up having a ripple effect for our economy, but the world economy essentially. And I really wanted to get into banking. I wanted to be an investment banker. My whole career, I wanted to get into finance. That's what I wanted to do. And when I graduated, I couldn't get a job to save my life. In fact, it took me over a year, 150 applications I remember submitting, but banks were failing and they weren't hiring anybody. And it really, really took me to a really, really sad, dark place because you work so long and then you graduate and then you can't get a job for over a year. In 2009, I actually ended up getting a job in New York City. It was a job in sales. And the reason why I took it, even though it wasn't what I wanted to do, was because it was based in New York City. And I wanted to be in the finance capital of the world because I figured that when the economic climate changed, that I would be able to get back into banking. So got my job in 2009 and it was great. And I was finally making money, but it was a sales job. And what that really meant was that you had to sell to make money. And there were some months that we didn't sell anything. I didn't sell anything and I wasn't making any money. And sometimes I didn't make any money to even cover my basic rent. And so it was really, really hard, kind of vacillating between great months of success and some months of not making any money and not being able to eat meals for days on end. That what I really wanted at the core was just a stable job with a stable income. And sure enough, in 2011, I got promoted. And it was awesome because I was promoted to a director position, which gave me a base salary, which basically said, hey, you now have a foundation of an income to where you can support yourself on a day-to-day basis. And that was amazing. Again, my euphoria metric like went off. Like I can actually cover my rent and my food, and I don't have to worry about going month to month. However, I was in an industry where I was, a somewhat attractive female, where most of the men or excuse me, most of the consumers were men. And, you dealt with you deal with a ton of shit, being patronized, being minimized, um, gosh, like overlooked for promotions, being sexually harassed, you name it. I know we've all experienced it. And in 2011, this is stuff you just don't talk about. And this is stuff you don't bring up. And, you're afraid to bring it to your boss. You're afraid to talk about it out loud because you're afraid of losing your job. And if you guys recall, the couple of years prior, not having a steady income also puts you in a place of fear, because now you become dependent on having that stability. So you go between highs of being super excited and lows of being, this is like very demoralizing what is happening to me. But the one thing that I think was really important is I tried to never let it get in my way. And, in 2015, I finally landed my dream job where I was able to be a head of sales at this tech company in Austin. And all of the stuff that I was dealing with in the past just went away. And I was respected, and things started to click, and I started to gain traction. And I just wasn't dealing with the stuff that I was dealing with before, which was awesome. And in 2017, I got poached by this other amazing company. And I thought, wow, this is awesome. Like, here it is. Now it's finally starting to make sense. My career is starting to take off. But if you can see how things fell down, what ended up happening with this company was I helped them go from nothing to a whole bunch of revenue. We made so much money that we were ultimately able to raise $10 million in funding, which is fantastic. We were all celebrating. But what had happened is after we raised all this money, I finally went on vacation for the first time in 14 months after killing myself to get this company to the place that it was. And when I went on vacation, I come to find out that the founder of the company actually offered my job to somebody else who was 20 years my senior, who was a man in this industry that, supposedly had all this experience. And I was meant to work for him now. And that really killed me, because at that time, it's like you work so hard so that you are recognized, so that you're the one that gets all of the accolades from all of the effort that you put in. And where I thought that I had finally gained the traction and the respect, what ended up happening is they went and they took the money and they offered it to somebody else, which just, it totally crushed me. And at that point, that's when I quit. And I said, you know what? I'm so sick of this shit. I'm so sick of my future being in other people's hands. And that is when I started Austin Software. And that's when I decided that I wanted to start my own company. I also took on a consulting project at this time too, to help with funding it. And that was the third YC company. And, it was great. And I came out of this like cloud of sadness after I had quit my job. I went into a serious state of depression, one of ones that, had me sleeping for a couple months on end. And I just had this epiphany one day of what I wanted to do. And it was so clear, and it allowed me to be energized again. And again, this is kind of the precipice for Austin Software and why we started it. And I got the business license. I started talking to some of my friends in the industry. I said, is this something that you would be interested in? Is this something that you would want to do? I'll do it for you, like no profit margin for me. Let me just start and make sure that this works. And people were saying yes. And so, it was great. The problem is in 2019, I miscalculated a bunch of things, and I made an almost fatal error with the business model that personally cost me $40,000. And I'm not going to get into the details of it. And it almost tanked the company completely. I basically went and had to cash out one of my retirement funds to cover this error. And then in 2020, if you guys recall, COVID hit. And there was so much uncertainty. And I know we all experienced this. Hiring paused, companies probably terminated a bunch of people. And, March 2020, there was just so much uncertainty. And my company was still very, very small at the time. We were making money, but we weren't making enough money where I could pay myself yet. I was still living off of my savings account. And fun fact, I was due for my first child in May of 2020, so 2 months later. And as of April 2020, I still remember this to this day. April 2020, I had $400 in my bank account. That's it. And I had a baby due in a couple weeks. My company was paused in the sense of growth. And I'm like, gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to continue. Um, but shit was real bad at this time. Um, but at the end of 2020, we somehow scraped by, and things started to accelerate and things started to get better. And we got accepted into Y Combinator. And in 2021, the company grew 700%, which is like insane. We had the biggest growth last year out of any company I've ever worked at in my entire life. Austin Software grew more than any of those companies just in 1 year and 1 year alone. And this is something that we had been working with for 3 years. And finally, from like an income perspective, I'm finally making more money now than I've ever made at any of my previous companies. And it's great, and it's been great. And the thing that I always tell myself is it might get bad again, and that's okay. Because perseverance and attitude is everything. And what I always say is the biggest disadvantage for anyone who's ever gotten anything easily is they don't know how to do the hard work. Struggles and failures are the best things for a successful career. It's also why I love being a female leader, because nothing was given to me easily. And therefore, nothing scares me. Even starting a business didn't scare me. Even going through all the shit I just shared with you guys about, it didn't scare me. Because when you're dealt with a lot of hard things and you overcome it, getting dealt with hard things again, it just becomes easier and easier. And then all of a sudden, the hard things are no longer hard, they become easy things. So even starting a business became easy. It actually became quite simple. And I realized, I did those 3 startups before where it wasn't my company. And then I did Austin Software. And I realized that there's like really only 6 things you need when you want to start a company. People overcomplicate it all the time. And it's not that complicated, really. I mean, it's complicated in the sense you have to have the idea. But these are the 6 things you need to think about if you ever want to start a company. And not that this talk is necessarily meant to be inspiring for how to start a company, but it's just something I always like to share because it surprises people. Because people overcomplicate it. But you really need money, idea, a business model, time, customers, network. And you don't need that much money. I had ended up saving a bunch of money. Other people will go and raise money from friends and family. Other people will raise money from a bank. Other people will get a loan. You just really need to know what you're trying to do to see how much money you need. Now, how I think about it is you need the capital. You need to know what is the problem that you're solving, which is the idea. You need to know how the business will make money. You will need to know how long it will take before the business makes money. And you need to know how you will get customers and who do you need on your team. I would say the biggest thing is what is the problem that you're solving, which is number 2, the idea, and how will the business make money. If you can figure those things out, then you can go and easily figure out how to get the customers, who you need on your team, how you get the capital. But let me quickly tell you how I did it, just so that you guys know. I had saved up a whole bunch of money. So if you recall, throughout my career of ebb and flowing, I started my career where money was uncertainty. And so when I started to get any kind of stability with income, I saved everything that I could on top of just like my core salary for over 10 years. And I had ended up saving over 150,000 that I then put aside for Austin Software. Now, if you recall, April 2020, when I had $400, I spent a lot of money to help get this going and up and running. And it was really hard. It was really hard to be at that place. But I remember when I started the company, I said, I have to do this for me. And if this money goes to zero, it goes to zero. What else have I been doing the last 10 years of my life? I want to put it towards something that at least I can invest in myself, because people will constantly take advantage of you if you let them. And so I didn't want to have that happen anymore. So I saved the money and then I used the money to start this business. The problem that I was trying to solve was US tech companies. So a lot of my friends, a lot of the companies that I worked at, were desperate to hire top engineering talent, but they didn't want to outsource their team and they didn't want to work with outsourcing firms. They wanted it to be their team. So that was a huge problem. And so I had come up with this idea, well, if you have complete transparency, then you'll have higher trust, because right now the reason people didn't want to outsource is because there was so much opaqueness and they felt like somebody was getting screwed somewhere. So the first idea was, let's have complete transparency, so everybody knows everything about everything. There's nothing to hide. And I had assumed it would take about 18 months, and it actually took about 21 months for us to go green, but I had assumed at the time it would take 18 months. And as I mentioned, I had built a reputation for making companies money, being successful in the tech world. So I used my friends, I used my network as the jumping off place for Austin Software. And one of my colleagues I had worked with in the past, one of my favorite heads of engineering, his name is Frank Lisea, is the most impressive engineering leader I have ever worked with. And I basically spent a year convincing him to come and be my co-founder. And he completely complements my skill sets because there is so much I don't know. And that is something that's really important. What is it that you know? What is it that you're good at? And then find someone that is equal to you in terms of the level of knowledge that you have and level of experience you have, but in departments and in areas where you don't have the experience. And together that balanced representation is going to give a much better holistic approach to any problem that you're trying to solve. And so where are we today? We have 206 employees. We are located in 7 countries and we work with 27 partners. Partners are our customers, but we call them partners for how we do it. And what I really genuinely feel is part of our secret sauce is the fact that we have balanced representation. So of our engineering managers, of our managers on our team, 50% of them are female. And on our internal team, 60% of our employees on our internal team are female. I really believe that diversity allows for a holistic approach when you are problem solving, and it allows companies to see blind spots, because when you are approaching a problem and you only have one perspective, you only see it from one side. So having that kind of friction actually allows people to grow and for companies to grow much faster. The other thing is you can't expect what you don't inspect. And so we actually have a board and it tells us what percentage of our managers are females, because it is super important to us for us to have that kind of balanced representation. Because throughout the course of my career, I saw so many companies fail because they only had one perspective. So where are we today in terms of the way that we're thinking about our company? We really want to give our team the best of both worlds, like I mentioned earlier, where people have opportunities in the US, but they have the community here, local, where everybody is living. So they can have the best trajectory for the career, but still communicate and share with teammates just, down the hall from them. We really focus on our team's well-being. It was really important to me to put the person's well-being first and foremost, because it's the way that I wished I was treated when I was an employee. And of course, we want to support their growth in every way. We want to support their education in any way possible. And we're working on so much more with the goal of what is best for you. We want to develop financial tech products where we can help give super low cost to no cost loans to our teams. We want to develop retention funds and pension funds. There's just so much in the works that we have for Austin Software for our team that we're able to invest for the future. And I truly believe that it is just because, like I said, I wanted somebody to do this for me and for my career, so I didn't have to have so much heartache along the way. So if we can minimize heartache in any way, shape, or form, then I feel like we are successful. And that really concludes the talk portion of this. And before I jump into questions, I really just want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Busqueras IT for hosting this call and inviting me here today, because, you know, it allows having a platform to share this message. Hopefully I can make somebody at least not feel so alone in their journey, because there's a lot of struggle to be successful and a lot of people don't talk about it. So I wanted to share. So thank you, Busquets IT, for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jacqueline. Well, you told us a great story, a fantastic story. And I have some questions. One of the questions, no, I have one question. I don't know how was, if it was a process or not, but how did you got with the idea of this company? And I don't know, I am thinking about the point too, that it's not easy to have an idea and a good idea for your business. And as you told us, you have been through different companies. How did you got this idea? Or
Yeah.
how this idea came up to you, and how was that? Because it seems to be so simple and easy, but it's not.
Well, that's a great question. So how I came up with the idea is, so at the company, the last company, the one that I quit because of the frustrating thing that happened. One of the things that was very, I came up with this idea because I was actually trying to solve a problem that was a pain point for me. So I was leading sales and I was sitting there talking to what they would call Fortune 500 companies. So like the top 500 companies in the United States. And this company was a supply chain logistics tech company. And so I would be talking to the executive team at these Fortune 500 companies, talking about how I was going to solve for their supply chains. And they would sit there and say, well, does your product have this? And does it do this? And does it do that? And I would go back to my dev team. And the answer was always no, it doesn't do this. It can't do this. And it won't do it. And of course, me not being satisfied with that answer, I would say, well, why? Why can't we do this? And their answer was, well, we don't have the resources to do it. We can't do it. Our team is small. And so then, of course, I was like, well, let's go raise money. Let's go get money so we can make our team bigger, so we can build faster, so that we can go and make these sales happen. Because I still was accountable for hitting our numbers and hitting our sales every month, even though our product was very, very limited in scope and what it could do. And the reason for the scope and what it could do is because we couldn't hire fast enough. And so we tried a bunch of different solutions. We tried working with engineers in Africa, but the time zone was just totally a nightmare. We tried working with outsourced companies and the communication was a nightmare. We tried hiring junior developers and, you know, just giving very experienced, like very specific things. And it was a nightmare. So what I realized is we are having a problem hiring top tech talent. It's not for lack of money, it's just for the lack of ability. And then I started talking to a bunch of my friends and they were having the same problem. And so it hit me. I was like, okay, well, we need a way to kind of balance this supply and demand. We have a crazy amount of demand in Austin, Texas, but our supply is very limited. So let's increase supply. And that was the first like aha, like let's help increase supply. The second aha was when I traveled down to a couple different cities in South America. I went and visited a couple different companies. So I went and visited Globant and Bears Dev and a couple of these like really big outsourced shops. And what I realized is that people were being treated like cogs in a machine. People were not being put first. You know, when you look at these companies and that's their whole business model and they're treating them like second class. I mean, it was horrific. And so that was the second part of it. It's like, man, like, why aren't we just treating, why can't we treat people with the utmost respect, give them everything they need to do? Because there's so much opportunity. Like there's an abundance of opportunity. So like, screw the partner, screw the clients. Let's focus on what the developer needs, because that is the main source of the problem, not the demand. The demand is there. So that was kind of where I approached it, or how I solved that problem.
No, it's fantastic. You had a vision. of course. And during the first time, or the few, or during the 2020, of course, do you think that Austin software wouldn't work, for example? In a
So
non so positive,
yeah, great.
or optimistic one?
Yeah, so I was actually where I was really scared was in 2019 when I had lost a bunch of money personally. Um, and the reason why is I was like, man, like if I made it was my own self-doubt. I was like, man, if I made this type of, you know, fatal error here right now, how can I make sure that I don't make another fatal error in the future? And so it was more of like a personal doubt, just to be like, okay, I really feel like I solved for all the problems for why this error came about in the first place. It was all based on how I was charging people. But how can I ensure that this doesn't happen again? And so I spent a lot of time to ensure it didn't happen again. So then in 2020, when that happened, I didn't think that I didn't think the company was going to die. I didn't have any fear about that. Um, I thought maybe the company would just kind of cruise for a while, and I didn't know how long that was going to be. The problem with the company cruising, though, is at the time I wasn't taking a salary or an income. And so I was more afraid of like, how long could I personally survive like this? And it, it wasn't much longer, but thankfully things turned. So I was more worried about myself than I was at the company in 2020. I was more worried about the company in 2019.
Yes, great. Yeah. Well, I have a question here. How do you figure out it was time for you to find the help of others, like hiring people, for example?
How did I figure out? I'm sorry, can you ask that question one more time?
How do you figure out it was time for you to find the help of others, like hiring people, or I don't know. I think that is asking about the business of Austin Software. I think that is the same question I made.
Yeah, no, but I can give a more macro perspective.
Yeah.
In Austin, when I moved there in 2011, there was really only a few tech companies. It wasn't the tech hub that it is today. And over the course of the next, several years, it started to really become a tech destination, especially thanks to South by Southwest. And if you know anything about American taxes, the state of California is horrible for businesses and the state of Texas is wonderful for businesses. And so I think as Austin started to become more known for being a tech hub, more and more companies were moving to Austin. The problem is we don't have a great technical incubator school like, for example, Stanford or MIT or Harvard. So if you're based in California in the Bay Area, or if you're based in the East Coast, every year there's a graduating class of very, very smart computer scientists, computer engineers. In Austin, we have University of Texas, really great school, but it's just not known like Stanford's known for computer engineers. And so what ended up happening is more and more companies came, more and more capital was coming, but it wasn't like we were getting more and more engineers. And so, and this was pre everybody working remotely, people only wanted to hire locally. So I think really I struck a balance of just kind of seeing the macro trends of what was happening and then starting this company before COVID hit and people started to be used to working remotely.
No.
So
Yes, got it. I have another question that is, why do you think there are so few women in the IT industry? That is a common question. but I don't know. What is your point of view, maybe?
I hate it, to be honest. I think that there's such few women because, again, like if you look at the macro trends of what people are encouraged to do, or the type of jobs that we're supported at doing, or what we're focused on, traditionally,
Yeah.
people subconsciously support men doing math and science and women doing more humanities type roles. And so if, people are subconsciously pushing you in those directions, then from a very young age, you start to self-validate against those biases. And I think unless like we can change that for our children, we're going to continue to see this type of discrepancy, because it's unfortunate, but it's the reason why we see this type of imbalance right now. But I do see people really focusing on STEM and trying to get more women involved in math and scientists now more than ever, which I hope that in 20 years from now, this isn't even going to be a conversation, because it's just going to be, bombarded with females.
Yeah, of course. I hope so. Yes. Another question is, do you think there are still opportunities for women in the IT tech area to start their own company? Well,
oh my God. Yes. Like 1,000,000,000,000,000%. And I think the thing that like I want to tell people all the time is that look, this might be a little biased, but I feel like female as leaders are better suited to be leaders, just because of all the struggles that we've had to get to the places in our career. It is just so much harder for us to get things, which makes us more resilient, which makes us more persistent, which are the key things that you need to be a leader. You need to be resilient and you need to be persistent. That's it. Because, you don't need to have the best idea. You don't need to have like the best network or the best connections. You just need to persevere when things get hard. And it can be a simple idea, but execution is everything. Execution is everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I have another question here that is, what is the biggest challenge as a female entrepreneur in technology? Maybe dealing with men, or I don't know.
That's a good question. I think that there's a lot of assumptions. So especially like, for example, with my co-founder, if I jump on calls where it is myself and my co-founder, people will tend to address him or ask him questions or defer to him. And right now, like that's it's not a huge challenge, but it's just, it's frustrating. Just the inherent biases that people have. Or they'll only talk to him and they won't loop me into the conversation, so I have to be looped in later. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing I'm experiencing right now. I also think that when you go to fundraise, while people want to invest in female founders, I have found that people get excited to talk to me because I am female and the numbers are good. And then at the end of the conversation, they'll be like, oh my God, and you're also amazing. Or, oh my God, you're also this like very compelling leader. And I'm just like, it's frustrating. It's like, why is that like an after? Why do you want to talk to me because you just want to like increase your portfolio of female companies? But then now you're excited. Well, of course we're good. Like, why does it matter whether I'm female or not female? Talk to me because you like the business. Talk to me because you're excited about what we're doing. Talk to me because I'm a female, I mean, I take advantage of it, of course. I'm not stupid, but it's frustrating there too.
Yeah, now and from my end, I have the first time I talked with you, it wasn't with you, it was with your husband. And we talk about many things. Yeah, and one thing was, I don't know how I talked with him about that, but I said, okay, it's very difficult for me to deal with being an entrepreneur and a professional and a man too. So we really want to have, I don't know, a good balance between these two worlds. And I didn't know you. So after that, Sophie, my partner, said, oh, how was this meeting? And I said, no, I don't know why I talk about my life and my children. And I really think that it was terrible. And they would never call us. And after that, he introduced me to you. And I think
he said,
this is fun. And well, it was a good experience to talk about.
Yeah, no, actually, so my husband, before we raised money, was one of the co-founders. He's no longer a part of the business, but he was back in 2018. And I remember he actually came back. He had made a meeting with 7 different companies, And he's like, nope, you have to talk to Anna. You have to talk to Buddha. They're the only, this is what he said to me. He's like, they're the only legit firm. That's who you should.
Really? Thank you very much. I thought it was a terrible call, but well, it was a good one. Well, I don't know if somebody else has another question.
While we're waiting for another question, I did want to introduce, we are doing, because we're on the topic, our company, Awesome Software, is hosting a Women in Tech webinar on Friday. So if you guys want to join as well, I know there's a bunch of different talks this week. We tried to make it short here. So it's short url.at/RUWHS. If you guys want to join, we're going to have a panel of a few different people to talk more about this subject too. So I know there might be more questions, but I also wanted to introduce this too.
Wow, thank you very much. I have another question here. And I will upload all this presentation and also this webinar recorded on our website, so we can write down there the link in order to make everybody goes. What advice would you give to a woman who wants to enter in the IT field?
So I have so much advice to give. I would say that if you believe, this is going to be so cheesy, so just forgive me, but it's so true. If you believe you can, you will. And if you believe you can't, you won't. There are so many things out there that's going to tell you you can't do something, or you won't be good enough, or you're too late to enter, or you don't have the background, or you don't have the experience, or you don't have the CV, or you don't have this, or you don't have that. And if you start to believe that, then it will be true. But if you tell yourself a story, whatever story it is, I want to be an engineer, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. And I mean, I totally believe in like visualizing your future, like write it down, put it in front of you, look at it every day, because if you believe it and you don't let any of these outside voices come in, then you will be able to persevere in a way that in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you'll look back and be like, wow, like, look at how far I've come. But the day-to-day is going to be very hard. But that's with anything, switching into tech, switching into any industry, there will be just so many naysayers. And it's mostly actually going to be from people on the inside, because, they don't want competition. So they're going to do everything to try and keep you out.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. It was a great moment with you. And well, thank you everyone for being here, for hear what Jacqueline wanted to tell, and her history and everything. And well, yeah, we will be there. It was, what was the date? 11th?
Let me put it back.
March.
So March 11th.
Okay.
And it is 2 p.m. your time.
Yeah.
And if you want to register for the event, go to short url.at/RUWHS.
Excellent. We will be there, of course. And well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time here. And well, keep in touch.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.